All right, so you know that feeling, right? Like walking into a space bar and instantly you can tell fists are about to fly. Yeah, that's the Star Citizen universe sometimes. Today we're breaking down the major factions, the movers and shakers that make the Gaiaverse what it is. And we've got a whole data file on these groups.
It's really interesting, it's not just about the size of these groups, it's the history. Some, like the Drop Kings, they've been around for centuries. To last that long in a place like the Gaiaverse, you've got to be tough, smart, and maybe a little bit lucky.
Okay, so lesson 1, brush up on your verse history, got it. But what about the folks trying to maintain some semblance of order? This file on the UEE's 999th Test Squadron, they sound intense.
Oh, they are, for sure. Imagine, like, the test pilots for humanity's wildest spacecraft. If you see a ship that's pushing boundaries, chances are the 999th, they were the ones who put it through the ringer first. Remember that Zeus spacecraft overhaul a while back?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was them. Instrumental in making that happen.
Which, when you really think about it, that's a lot of trust the UEE puts in them, right? Here, take this experimental ship that might blow up if you look at it funny, and go do some barrel rolls.
Exactly. And their history. Just as impressive as the tech. Michelle Celino, the founder. First human to ever quantum travel past Jupiter. Talk about a legacy.
Makes my head spin just thinking about it. Okay, so from the daredevils to, let's just say, the heavily armed and prepared. Nope. We've got some data here on the Civilian Defense Force, the CDF. They're like the galaxy's backup plan when things go south, right?
Right, exactly. Think of it this way. The UE Navy, they're busy with the big picture, right?
Yeah.
Like a Van Duel attack or something. That leaves systems vulnerable. That's where the CDF steps in. Remember that raid on Stanton a few years back? Brutal. The CDF, they held the line, bought precious time for reinforcements to arrive.
Not all heroes wear capes, right? Some carry really, really big guns. And then you've got, keeping those corporate profits safe and sound. That's where Crusader Security comes in.
Ah, yes, Crusader Security, the muscle behind Crusader Industries. They're an interesting case because are they keeping the peace? Or are they just another power player? Depends on who you ask, really.
See, that's what I love about digging into this stuff. It's all about perspective. But let's be real, sometimes you got to deal with the groups who toss the rule book out the airlock, this file on the Drop Kings. Yeah, they've had centuries to perfect that art.
The Drop Kings are fascinating because they show you just how deeply smuggling is woven into the verse. They've outlasted governments, technology. They just persist, which tells me they've got their hands in a lot of pies.
And they haven't exactly made a lot of friends along the way, judging by this rivalry with the headhunters over in Pyro. Sounds like a turf war with some seriously high stakes.
Oh, absolutely. And a long memory, let me tell you. This isn't just about who gets the profits now. It's generations of grudges, resources, those black market connections. When you see a headhunter symbol, usually a skull, just to be clear.
Yeah.
It's a message. This is ours. Stay away.
Subtlety isn't really their style, huh? But they're not the only ones playing for keeps in Pyro. We've got some info on the Fire Rats, and let's just say they're hardcore, like next-level hardcore.
The Fire Rats are a trip, Outlaw tactics, but with this, like spiritual reverence for Pyro's star. They're notorious for shipjacking, and those scars they get from flying too close to the star. Badges of honor, that's how they see it.
I always figured space was scary enough without daring a star to burn you to a crisp, but hey, to each their own, right?
Right, and then you've got groups like Xenothreat. They're different. They tap into that fear, that resentment that's always simmering beneath the surface. Corporations, anyone they see as outsiders, they're fair game. Remember their attack on Stanton in '51? Brutal. Really highlights how dangerous it can be when a group exploits those existing divisions. It's a good thing we've got all this data, helps to keep track of who's who, like who you don't want to run into in a deep alley, or a star system for that matter.
Because in the verse, knowing who to trust or who to avoid, that's survival.
Speaking of, this file on the Rough and Ready gang, they're like the poster children for shady dealings over in Pyro, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing about them. They highlight how even in chaos, you get order of a sort. Pyro, smuggler's paradise, pirate haven, right? The Rough and Ready, they saw a business opportunity. Need fuel, sure, but it'll cost you a lot. More like protection money, really. They've got these refueling stations, run them with an iron fist. And those chess-themed names, Checkmate Station, Rook's Resupply. Gotta give them points for style.
It's like they're saying we're criminals, but we're criminals with a theme song.
Right. Though for a real mystery, wrapped in an enigma, you gotta look at the Nine Tails, this file. It's more rumor than hard data, even for the verse. Right. Ghost stories, basically. They pop up, pull off some crazy heist, like breaking someone out of a high-security prison, and disappear. And the rumors about ties to the Rangda Syndicate. Chilling stuff.
What gets me about the Ninetales is we don't know what they want. Are they in it for the money, some ideology, revenge? Hard to say, which makes them unpredictable, a wild card.
Which is probably exactly how they like it, keeps everyone guessing. But while the Ninetales keep to the shadows, there are others who are very vocal about, let's say, their disagreements with the way things are. The People's Alliance, for example. They're done waiting for change. They're making it happen their way.
And their solution is pretty radical, right? If you don't like the system, build your own. They've claimed this derelict asteroid far outside UEE space. Their whole thing is self-sufficiency, equality, a utopian ideal. Whether it can work in the long run, who knows?
It's a noble goal, for sure. But can you really escape the verse by just hiding from it? I guess only time will tell if their utopia can actually make it, or if the reality of the galaxy will catch up.
It reminds you of that change. It doesn't happen overnight. It's messy, unpredictable. Speaking of change, sometimes it comes from the least expected places. And for that, we got to talk about Tide.
Oh yeah, this file gave me chills. These are the folks who helped bring down the Messer regime, from the inside no less.
Tide understood something crucial. Information. That's power. They worked in secret, gathering evidence, exposing the Messer's corruption. Eventually, they sparked a revolution, brought the whole rotten structure crashing down.
And they did it all while staying completely off the grid. Under the Messer's watch, that's almost unbelievable, really makes you think. Even in the darkest times, there's always someone willing to stand up for what's right, no matter the risk.
Tide's legacy. Powerful, to say the least. But let's switch gears a bit to a group that embraces a different kind of risk, shall we? This data on Wildstar racing. Talk about life on the edge.
These pilots are insane. Asteroid fields, derelict stations, places I wouldn't go with a whole armada, and these guys are ripping through there at top speed.
That's the allure, though, isn't it? Pushing the limits, your ship, everything. Yeah, it's dangerous, but it's also responsible for some of the biggest leaps in spacecraft tech. Things we all benefit from, even if most of us will never even set foot in a racing ship.
So it's like entertainment that also pushes the boundaries of what's possible. I can get behind that. And speaking of pushing boundaries, the Nova Riders. Now, those were your classic space pirates, back when it was all about boarding parties and, well, style.
They were the original disruptors, flipping off authority, ignoring distress calls, blasting thrash metal. Reckless. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Audacious. Definitely. But they captured people's imaginations, that's for sure.
And they were pretty good at disappearing, too. This file mentions multiple times where they supposedly disbanded, only to reappear years later, ready to cause more chaos.
Makes you wonder, did they ever really go away? Or were they just waiting for the right moment to make their comeback?
It's a good reminder that in the verse, some stories, they never really end. They just fade out, waiting for the next chapter. It's true, sometimes laying low is the best move, live to fight another day, right? But speaking of stories, this data file on the Outsiders, it's like something straight out of sci-fi novel, Sun worshippers, anti-consumerist, got a whole planet to themselves. Where do I sign up?
Well, hold on now. It's not exactly a vacation spot. The Outsiders, or the Sensei Fellowship, to be official about it, they're intense. They looked at the verse, at all the technology, the focus on wealth, and said, nope, not for us. Decided to forge their own path.
And more power to them. But you gotta wonder, how do they make it work, right? An entire society saying no thanks to the modern galaxy. I admire it, but practically speaking, how do they survive?
Right. It's the big question, isn't it? The Outsiders, they keep to themselves, which is saying something in a galaxy obsessed with data and knowing everything about everyone.
It's almost kind of nice, A reminder that there are still places in the verse untouched by the constant flow of information. A little mysterious. Of course, it probably also means showing up on their doorstep is a bad idea.
Unless you're really into, staring contests at high noon.
Let's just say, they're not exactly known for their diplomacy. But speaking of groups that keep the verse running, we can't forget the folks doing the hard work. The United Resource Workers, the URW.
The miners, the drillers, the ones pulling the raw materials out of asteroids so we can have our fancy ships and gadgets. Not glamorous, but hey, somebody's got to do it. Absolutely, and the URW, they get it. They understand strength in numbers. Mining. Dangerous work. The URW, they've fought to make sure their people are treated fairly, paid what they're worth, and most importantly, safe.
Makes you realize every ship, every piece of tech, it starts with someone, somewhere doing a risky job, often far from the spotlight. Good reminder that even in a galaxy full of hotshot pilots and CEOs, sometimes it's the ones you don't hear about who are keeping things running.
Couldn't have said it better myself. As we reach the end of this data file, what strikes me is the connections, how it all ties together. These factions, they might seem separate, opposed even, but they all make up the verse.
Exactly. Like, you've got the citizens for Pyro trying to clean up the mess groups like the Drop Kings and Headhunters leave behind. And who do you think transports all those fancy sculptures for the Imperial Arts Foundation? Probably the ITG.
Precisely. It's this intricate web of relationships, right? Rivalries, dependencies, understanding even a little bit of it. That's invaluable in the verse.
Knowledge is power, after all. So next time you're setting a course for the unknown, remember, out there, you've got your Drop Kings, your URW miners, the CDF keeping watch.
The verse is more than just planets and stars. It's this living thing, constantly evolving with all these groups, all these individuals trying to make their mark.
And knowing who's who could be the difference between a successful cargo run and becoming just another story, a warning whispered across the comms. Until next time, fly safe out there, and remember, the verse is always watching.